So today I would like a drum roll. I have filled up this sketchbook. So I'm immensely proud of myself when I fill up a whole sketchbook. That's 97 pages. And I just wanted to take you inside it and show you every page and just talk a little bit about what I've been up to and how I use my sketchbook. I started this sketchbook on the 30th of March and it's now the end of September, so this is about 6 months that I've been working in the sketchbook, and this is the very first page. I quite often don't like the first couple of pages in my sketchbook. There's something a bit awkward and self-conscious about them, and sometimes I don't even start at the very beginning. I start a few pages in, but in this particular sketchbook I did start on this page, and it's, I don't know, watercolour, felt tip pen, fine liner. These no, not that page, these 3 pages, I didn't like them and I kept adding things to them to try and make them better. And actually what I did is I just made them worse, which is fine. And I like to think about my sketchbook pages. I often quite like to think of them, the pages I don't like, as a problem to solve and something that I can try and resolve. And sometimes that resolution works and sometimes it really doesn't. So I started this page with some crayon and some watercolour, like blue watercolour, and then I went over it, I think, with blue felt tip pen and then black felt tip pen. And anyway, they both look a bit of a mess, but that is part of the joy and part of the beauty of a sketchbook. Sometimes the pages are lovely and sometimes they're terrible, but you can just turn the page. And that's what I really like about it. So these pages were made with felt tip pen, and there are sort of these 3 collage pieces here were made with acrylic ink, and I've just kind of cut them up and stuck them on. And again, these pages were made the same. I use a lot of felt tip pen and I never used to, so I think what happens is often my sketchbook reflects what's going on in my life and the curiosities and my fascinations and also what's happening more generally. So a couple of years ago I was quite poorly and wasn't able to work in my studio, and so the only art I was making was really the art I was making on while sat on the sofa or sat in bed. So that is when I started to use felt tip pens, because they were very easy, so you could have a pencil case and create without making, without paint and all sorts of things. And actually last year when we had a house flood and had to move out for 6 months, that's also, I had a lot of felt tip pens then. So they've kind of seeped into my art making, and I often create on the sofa. So that's why I probably use lots of felt tip pens, because I might be doing it whilst I'm also watching telly or something else. This is a page where I've painted the background with acrylic paint. So I do use some paint in my sketchbooks, but when I tend to use acrylic paint, I tend to not put loads and loads and loads of it on, because sometimes the pages stick. But and this is pieces of collage that I was just making with ink. This sketchbook sort of started off being nature themed, just because I happened to be doing lots of nature themed projects at the time. I was filming a class, and I was also, later on I'm doing some pages where I'm thinking about a series of paintings that I'm doing for a hospital in the States. So I thought, oh, I'll have a nature themed sketchbook, but I got bored of that, and whenever I set myself these rules, I tend to break them. And this was Indian ink and just bits of paper cut up and stuck on. Acrylic ink with paper stuck on, and some white pen here. Just being inspired by my local park, I think. A walk in the park. This is again felt tip pen, and these pieces are pieces of collage that I've made with ink and then cut out and stuck on. So I do like sticking stuff into my sketchbook, as you will see as we go through. And I'm often coming back and changing the colour. Look, there's obviously something here that I didn't like, that I've just sort of coloured over, tried to ignore. Stick something over, that's always a good technique, sticking stuff over. Here we go, so these pages are all, this is felt tip pen and I think coloured pencil. And again, felt tip pen, and this was the fine liner. I'm just doing some drawing. Watercolour paint with a fine liner over the top. I was just drawing a leaf, the same leaf over and over and over. And then here I was starting to think about some work I'm doing for a client, and so I was just experimenting with shapes and organic forms and patterns and compositions to see what I liked. And I'll put a link to the pens that I use. I've got a video somewhere on Black and White Pages, so I'll put a link to that in case you're interested in how I created these pages. But basically it's with a black pen. Lots and lots of colouring in, sticking things on, exploring again. This sketchbook is a bit eclectic, or all over the shop. And then we've got watercolour, a page of watercolour, some more watercolour. This background used to be bright blue and I really didn't like it. It kept jarring me. So whenever I would flick through my sketchbook, there was this page, I just didn't like it. And I went over the watercolour with a felt tip pen, and now there's something about this colour that I really love. It's brought a real richness that I enjoy. So there we go. More black pen. See that I'm just take an idea and then just go do it again. Lots of repeating and repetition and exploring. And these were the starting points for a series of paintings that I'm doing for a client. So I'm just sort of thinking about how I want these patterns and shapes to go. Ooh, colour. Felt tip pen again. And often I get asked how I get the colours so rich. So I tend to use water-based felt tip pens because they don't bleed through to the other side. If you use alcohol-based marker, it will bleed through, really, no matter the paper, in my experience. And what I often do to get these really rich colours is go over and over again. So not just one layer of felt tip pen, but quite a few to get that kind of real intense colour. And here, this is acrylic paint, sorry, and I've collaged pieces on here, so I'm just sort of playing about. And actually I made these outside of my sketchbook and I've stuck them in, which is often what I do. I might do something in my studio and then just want to keep it as a reference point, as a memory, as something to inspire me in the future, so I'll stick it in my sketchbook. Again, these are stuck in. These next 4 pages were I made a little collage out of some magazine scraps and then I painted it. So I made the collage and then I used that as my subject matter to paint. There we go. Those. Some black and white paintings, and then a whole series of acrylic paintings. I also have a video on these ones, so I will link to that if you're interested in how I kind of got the inspiration for these. Now, when I stick acrylic paint into my sketchbook, I find that it often, the pages will stick together, but I don't mind too much about that. Because really, it's not about having perfect pages. This is about a memory, about a filing cabinet, about keeping my ideas sort of safe and sound. And I do like to see how themes emerge through a sketchbook. There's something quite fun about a sketchbook in that you don't know where it's going to take you. And then when you filled it up, or when I filled it up, I think, gosh, I didn't realise I was going to do all this. So that's quite a fun thing. And then there's a whole series of black and white and blue where I'm basically thinking about what I'm going to be doing for my next series of paintings, and I'm busy with lots of things going on, but I know that I want to get to a series of acrylic paintings. And here I'm sort of thinking about I don't know, I'm not consciously thinking I'm going to plan out a painting, but I am exploring some of the shapes, and I know I want them to be quite have quite bold compositions, so we will see how these materialize into something else. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking that they are going to be the springboard for some paintings. So look, you can see that I really love using just a black felt tip pen, and I go through quite a lot of refills, and just really enjoying the marks and the patterns that I can create. And then this was a page that was inspired by a walk, just a walk home from the train station. And then I kind of took some of this sort of shape that I used, sort of simplified it and advanced it, I think, changed it. So you'll see my sketchbook. I mean, it's like a again and again. And then, oh gosh, so this is the last page of my sketchbook. This is a bit eccentric. I go to an art group and with some friends of mine that are artists, and each time we set ourselves a little brief or challenge, and this was a kinetic art challenge, and everyone else in my group were making really ambitious 3D mobiles with wire, and I was drawing these little crazy animals and people and putting these little brass splitter tacks so you could move the limbs. Anyway, I thought it was quite good fun. It reminded me of making little dolls with movable arms when I was little, with these little brass tacks that you can use. So I've just stuck those in as a reminder, because it might be something that I want to explore. So there we go. That is this sketchbook, which is full of all sorts, really, isn't it? But a sketchbook is a place where I really just make art for me. So sometimes I'm following a theme and sometimes I'm just colouring in.